This is the business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. If everyone could please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States Republic and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Lorraine, if you could please call the roll.
Linda Avanzato.
Here.
John Viscarden.
Here.
Larry Cerisi. Carol Clarkin.
Here.
Robert Jones.
Here.
William Mudge.
Here, I think.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Julia Held. Here. Chelsea Campbell.
Here.
Thank you.
Lorraine, could you please go over the calendars too?
February 26th, wellness meeting, 3:30 p.m., conference room B, Central Administration Building. February 26th, also facility subcommittee meeting, 5 p.m., school committee room, Central Administration Building. March 4th, policy subcommittee meeting, 8:30 a.m., Central Administration Building. March 11th, school committee work session, North Kingstown High School cafeteria. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few recognitions to give, but Dr. Auger, do you have anything?
I don't have anything this evening. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have anything? Okay, we did have a number of sports that are winding down for the winter season, and so a few of them, I know indoor track and swimming had their, and gymnastics all had their state championships, and so we have 3 students who we're going to be inviting to our March meeting because they came in first at states. Zach Emmerich won both the 300 meters and the 600-meter run for the boys indoor track. And for the girls, Maria Bollebrook won the 55-meter hurdles for the 3rd straight year in a row for indoor hurdles.
That's great.
And in boys swimming, Mike Toulin won the 100-yard butterfly and the 500-yard freestyle. So other of our competitors who did real well, I just wanted to announce was we had, and I may mispronounce the names, but Alan DeBasey, I'm just looking over there. She came in second in all-around gymnastics competition. Ben Stewart came in 3rd in the state championship for 300 meters. Joe Craven came in 2nd in the 800 meters, and Ian Connors came in 5th in the 800 meters. Ben Lee came in 3rd in the high jump. Tyler DeBate came in 5th in the hurdles. Dallin Smith came in 6th in the 1,500 meters. Overall, the boys track team came in 4th in the 4x200 relay, 5th in the 4x400 relay. I'm getting it mixed up. They came in 2nd in the state on the 4x400 and 2nd in the 4x800. Bethany Nunnery came in 4th in the girls indoor track for 3,000 meters. And the girls indoor track team, freshman indoor track team, came in 2nd at the freshman meet, but they won the JV indoor state track meet. We had swimming just 2 nights ago, and in that we had Hannah Parasol came in 2nd in the 200-yard individual medley and 2nd in the 500-yard freestyle. Emmy Landon came in 2nd in the 50-yard freestyle and 2nd in the 100-yard freestyle. Shannon Fain came in 5th in the 50-yard freestyle and 6th in the 100-yard freestyle. Megan Davis came in 7th in the 50-yard freestyle and also in the 100-yard freestyle. Overall, the girls' relay teams came in 2nd in both the 200 freestyle and the 400 freestyle. So we had quite a few athletes who did pretty well.
Kingstown Olympics.
Yeah, really. Okay. All right. So that brings us to citizens' comments, and we have a couple people signed up here. First, we have Paul Mumford, and then we have Rachel Burson.
I came here tonight. I'm Paul Mumford. I live in North Kingston. I've been here all my life. I'm a big taxpayer in this town. I've been a school bus contractor for over 25 years. About a year ago, me and Ms. OJ had a disagreement on one of my drivers that could work for me. I made an appointment with him 3 times. and he has never showed up for either appointment that he made with me. The last time I did meet with Mary King and John Horan, it was very nice. I had no problem with that. But the problem was Mary King and John Horan could not answer the question. So that was about a year ago. So my wife went in about 5 days ago and talked to John Horan, see if it could be brought up again and ask some more questions. And John Horan, I guess, went to Dr. O.J., and John Horan said that he did not want to get into it, so he turned it over to Dr. O.J. So my wife called Dr. O.J., and he has refused to have a meeting with me. This was about 1:45 this afternoon. I thought that school committee and the superintendent had an open door policy. Has it something changed that I have missed? I can't believe this is the first time in my lifetime I have been refused a meeting with a superintendent, and I have been through about 4 of them in the last 0.5 years. This is the first time I have ever been refused for a meeting. What is the reason?
I'd be happy to respond. First, Mr. Mumford, I've had a good relationship with you, and, there's nothing about this that is personal. Your comments tonight are a little bit inaccurate. I did meet with you and the person that you're advocating for originally. So we had a meeting.
We did.
Okay.
I walked in,
Yeah,
and we did have a meeting.
Okay. And I gave you an answer.
No, you did not.
If you just allow me to respond.
Go ahead.
I did give you an answer then, and I haven't changed my mind on that. So, I don't know how, my open door policy, as you call it, I mean, I've made a decision. I don't see any reason to rescind that decision, and I've been pretty adamant about that, and I've been asked about it a number of times. So I just want to put that out there.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. The first meeting we had, I came to you, and there was a problem.
When was that?
About a year ago. There was a problem, and you recommended for him to go and get it off his record. It cost him $3,000 to get it off his record. He has a clean record now.
Madam Chair, we're going above and beyond what citizens' comments are.
Excuse me.
Mr. Mumford has a right to speak, but it's
Right to
getting
speak?
into a debate, and that's not what citizens' comments is for.
Well, we've...
Yes, Mr. Mudge, I have the floor right now.
The superintendent was allowed to speak. I think we ought to let Mr.
And
Mumford
I have
speak.
the floor, Mr. Mudge. Thank you. So, Mr. Mumford, if you could wrap up your comments, please.
I got one question. How can I have a meeting with Dr. O.J. with a lawyer?
Mr. Mumford, again, citizens' comments usually isn't in question and answers, but if Mr. Mumford wants to bring a lawyer and meet with Dr. O'Jay, we'll set up a schedule when I'm available so that Mr. Mumford's attorney is also available.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to Rachel Burson.
Hi, I'm Rachel Burson, and I would like to talk about a subject that is pretty important to me based on what the past few years have looked like, and that is standardized testing. Now, standardized testing, it's passing the kneecap or the park, whatever we're calling it now, is now a graduation requirement, and it's been that way for a little while. But standardized testing, it's not just limited to that. We've had it all throughout middle school and all throughout elementary school. And I think that's a real problem. I think standardized tests are not an accurate measure of student achievement. And furthermore, they have taken creativity and teachers' freedom to experiment and try new styles of learning that support all manner of students' learning styles out of the classroom because they have to focus on a set curriculum for standardized testing. And I know, for instance, in middle school, our 6th grade class was denied an opportunity to participate in woodshop because they had to take a math class because some of the math scores were down in standardized testing. And I know I can say for myself, I'm not sure how other students would feel about this, but I learned more in that woodshop class than I had in maybe 2 or 3 years of math. That class was not only incredibly beneficial to my math skills, but also taught me to think in ways that I never thought in a classroom with a regular curriculum. So, in conclusion, I just want to say that I think standardized testing, by valuing that, we're kind of turning away from learning and how am I doing for time? Right?
You're fine.
Okay,
You're fine, Rachel.
because I have a short poem I want to read that I wrote last year in response to all of this, and it's called Standard Testing. In olden days, we used to say, recite and memorize, but we need different methods because we want to be more wise. We need some testing data so that we can analyze. The tests may tell us nothing, but who cares? They're standardized. We don't just want you to excel, we want you to compete. So we'll compare to other schools and see whose scores we beat. As long as we're a top 5 school, anything flies. The tests may tell us nothing, but who cares? They're standardized. We'll cancel all your specials, and we'll make you study math. And if your scores do not improve, you'll feel your teacher's wrath. You can't have any fun until we see those numbers rise. The tests may tell us nothing, but who cares? They're standardized. So fill in all the bubbles, and you'll just be right or wrong. Don't try to justify your choice, because that'll take too long. You don't care if the material is in what you recognize. The tests may tell us nothing, but who cares? They're standardized. It doesn't matter if you're creative, we just want those answers right. And we're the ones in charge, so don't even try to fight. We studied all the outcomes, and from what we can surmise, the tests will tell us nothing, but who cares? They're standardized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I do believe Rachel had a handout for all of us that Lorraine will make sure that we all
Good.
get here before the end of the meeting, or at the end of the meeting. Okay. Are there any other people who are here for citizens' comments who didn't sign up but would like to speak? All right. That moves us into routine items, and the first item is the executive session minutes from February 25th, 2014. I don't believe we have any disclosure of executive session votes, Louis?
No votes tonight, no.
So do I have a motion to seal the minutes from February 25th, 2014?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
I abstained, by the way. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
There.
All right, that brings us into the consent agenda. Are there items to exempt from the consent agenda?
Trying to get I do as soon as I get my act together here. They were, I'm sorry, oh, there it is. I'd like to exempt C, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mudge, I was asking Dr. Ajay something, but I skipped over.
C.
C? Okay, thank you.
Was that all of C, Mr. Mudge?
Yeah, I guess so.
Great. So do I have a motion to approve items A and B?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so it's actually just B because we've already done A. All right, so that brings us to item C. And the first item under C is C1, the approval of appointments. Mr., do I have a motion to approve C1?
I have questions?
Yep, yes, you'll be able to ask questions. I'm just looking if there's a motion to approve C1.
I'll put a motion on the table.
Second it.
Okay. Mr. Mudge, you have a question about C1?
Yeah, again, I would believe we should show a couple of things in the summary sheet here. One is, again, the funding again, in the account. And, as I see these things, and I go through here, how much is actually allocated? I know we say you're going to hire a person for $24 an hour, one for $3 an hour, something like that. But I wonder what is totally allocated to that particular function. Is it $25,000, $30,000, $40,000? And, I don't see that in here. I don't see it in the backup. So I would ask that whatever the total cost for that particular function is, be placed in the minutes of the meeting. Is it half the budget for the grants or not, or whatever? So that was my comment on the first one.
All right. Are there any other comments on the 21st Century Grant funding? Okay, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
I'm saying aye, basically, but I'd like to have the total sum that we expect to spend for that function in the second place. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to C2. Do I have a motion to approve C2?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Mudd, you wanted to talk about the spring coaches?
Yes, I do. I'm kind of troubled by the fact that we have in that report, we have, 7 or 8, 9 positions that suggest that we're funding these assistant coaches with other funds. My question is, are they town funds? Are they state funds? Or what funds are paying for the assistant coaches? I don't have a problem with the coaches or anything like that, but I'm wondering where the funding is coming from.
Well, I think that this is probably a good time to ask the group exactly what they want to call this, because we went round and round. These non-general funds are funds that are fundraised. What do you want to call that? So that's why we put it in here that it says non-general, so you know that it does not come out of your general budget. But when we put volunteer, that really wasn't a word we really liked either, because they're not always volunteers.
Mike?
Oh, fundraised funds.
Well, they're all different. Like
They are all different.
Like the unified basketball coaches come from Special Olympics. The Special Olympics gives them a stipend that then they share depending on the number of coaches. And so some of the other ones are, from private sources, but people didn't like that before when that was on there. Some of them are the NK5K. Or some of the
Those are all
track
fundraised funds, though,
Right.
aren't they?
Right. So that's the point. Is it's not taxpayer dollars. It's not out of any of our funds. It's from different sources. So that's the question: is what the committee wants from that, because it's non-general funds.
I think the answer is pretty clear. We ought to follow the UCAR regulations and the Department of Ed regulations, which classify these things. We have internal activity fund. I assume that none of this is coming from internal activity funds. These are strictly funds from boosters clubs or other clubs, and they basically represent a grant or a gift.
I don't think any of them come from booster funds.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I assume that they don't. So these are contributions of the grants.
They're not grants, they're completely outside of the school department's budget.
They're a donation then.
They go through the student activity fund. They go through whatever that team is
but-
doing. Team fundraises, the team gives money to the coach. It might come through Special Olympics or whatnot.
But again, see, this is the problem we keep going around with. I'm saying is we should follow the core guidelines and the Department of Ed guideline. If the kids raise the money, it is their money. It is not the school committee's money, nor do we have the responsibility or authority to allocate their money. It
And
is
we're
up to the children, or the kids, I should say, to allocate their funds however they want to do that.
We're not allocating their funds. You are approving these people so that they're covered under our liability insurance, and we're making note that it is non-general funds, so nothing is coming out of our budget.
So I don't hear any disagreement among us. What I think we're all saying is that just what do you want to see so that in terms of the label, so that you know it is not school district funds. Mrs. Clark?
Well, again, we need to classify this. If it's an activity account or something, the regulations are pretty clear. We should identify it as it is a donation then.
Mrs. Clarkin?
I would suggest calling it something like a coaching contribution fund or outside coaching contribution fund. So it's not labeled fundraiser funds. It's, I don't know if that suggestion would encompass all of the different funding sources.
Private funding.
Madam Chair, it's very clear that the categories are outlined specifically to cover these things in the regulations, so why don't we just look at the, the regs?
No, they
Okay? They most certainly do.
Well, our finance manager is telling us that it isn't clearly outlined. That's why we're having
Well,
the discussion.
I'm telling you, it is, okay? And I've sent those things out, and all we got to do, if all the people are laughing, is look at the federal guidelines and look at the state UCOA, because it's very clear in there that we can't accept gifts, okay?
Mrs. Avanzato?
That's not clear at all. We have a donations policy. Every institution in this country accepts gifts, every college, every high school.
Linda, there's a policy
However-
that drives that.
I agree, we have a policy, and also,
As violates
what you're
the state
referring to is the state and federal guidelines for accounting. I'm sure we're following. But in terms of how it's classified internally on our agendas, we can decide how we classify it. I think that's the difference here.
Yeah, you're right. May I say, why
I
don't we
would
just
say.
give this to an auditor or somebody to have him tell us how we should do this? Because it has a lot to do with finances and a lot to do with fundraising and a lot to do with our responsibilities. And it's all, it's basically all in regulation.
Mr. Busgarden?
Thank you, Ms. Page. Just a couple questions. Just so I understand, Mrs. King, the non-general funds, for example, 3 assistant boys baseball coaches that are non-general funds,
Correct.
that money does not pass through you,
It
right?
does not.
The reason they're on this list is, as you said, to make sure they're covered by insurance.
That's correct.
So basically, we're picking nits here on what these people are called.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Why don't we call them unicorn people? It doesn't matter what they're called, because it's not our funds, Bill. It's not our money.
John, it is, all I'm saying, John, don't believe me, let's look at the regulations, because there are things we can do. We have fiduciary responsibilities to manage and oversee the school activity funds for kids.
All
We
right,
have a
so
responsibility to do that.
This
And
doesn't-
falls in that, John, it does.
No, it doesn't.
all right, folks,
John,
we have a
it does.
motion on the table.
I'm-
And just hold on a second, and then I'll call hands, okay? We have a motion on the table to approve the coaches. We can put on our agenda for a different day to discuss what we want to call this. But I am thinking we're kind of getting caught up here in the discussion that we have a lot to go over here tonight. So I'm asking if the committee will merely vote to approve this, and then on a different night, we can come back and decide how we will classify this. Is that agreeable to the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. I have a question that's not related to this
Go ahead,
part of
Mr.
the discussion,
Buster.
but is related to this list. I know we've had this question asked in the past, and I don't know that it's ever been clearly answered. If it has, I don't recall. Why are we paying a head coach and 2 assistant coaches, just what we're paying, not the 3 that are non-general funds? Why do we have a head coach and 2 assistant coach for boys baseball, but yet girls softball, we only have 1 assistant coach? Why do the boys get the additional assistant coach?
This is.
It's a freshman,
until
too?
we have this conversation.
I don't know, that's what I'm asking. I don't understand.
I don't know.
He's a freshman at
I can
JV.
find out. I can find out for you, Mr. Fitzgarden. I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, what's the difference, do we have, is there a freshman team for baseball, not for girls softball?
I'm going to call on Mr. Jones and then Mrs. Avanzato.
That's a good point, John, and I would say that, the sort of athletic advisory group that's been started, but, is for, because a lot of different reasons hasn't, had a chance to meet quite consistently. But I think one of the things the administration has said is to ask for a little flexibility in terms of looking at the size of the teams and the numbers, and, in some cases where lacrosse may have 40 or 20, and have some flexibility to say this year they might need 2, and another year they might need only 1, and was sort of looking at a goal of saying what's sort of the maximum amount, or really the minimum amount that a team needs that we would be, responsible and have the responsibility to fund, and then give the administration flexibility to say, and in a given year, they might need one or two here and move them around, or obviously if other funds become available, to work that. So I don't know if that's, maybe a numbers issue in this case of the two, but I agree in principle that we probably need to establish from the administration sort of a standard kind of organization for teams, and we've talked about this a little in terms of, when some teams maybe get too big for the roster size to accommodate how that, so.
And we might have done some of that when we did our contract most recently, because I know this topic of coaching was heavily discussed.
But I would add that, in some cases, I agree with the chair's point, but I think it would be nice, like Special Olympics, that would be nice to know. I mean, that's a fairly simple thing to say. We know the source of if it's a thing like that to put on. And then, work the other things as the chair recommended.
Mrs. Avanzado.
A lot of us we've talked about these kinds of issues often over the years, and I think when we have the conversation about how to classify the funds, we can also talk a little bit about some of those specifics too. As I recall, very recently, it was during the contractual discussions, we came up with a formula that was much more fair regarding coaches, how many for each team. It was actually, I think we even discussed it at a meeting, that it was a very good eventuality. We've been waiting for years to have a standard we could go by where it would be, each sport would be treated more fairly. So that was just recently. So maybe we can refresh everyone's recollection on that, get a copy of that to everyone before we have this larger conversation.
But this doesn't fall under the new bargaining agreement, though.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
And
Salary.
yes, but it never talked about the number of coaches, does it? It just talks about the amount each person is paid, right?
You're correct.
Yes. If the district picks up the cost of a particular coach, how much that coach is paid.
Right. So, again, back to my point is that, and I understand your point, Bob, and I would think that as the ebb and flow of the team size goes from year to year, that's when you would make the difference with non-general fund coaches, that there should be a set amount, there should be for example, a head coach, an assistant coach that we fund. Anything other than that, based on the ebb and flow, the size, and the desire of that particular sport, should come from non-general fund sources. And I would just like to know why we are funding 2 assistant boys baseball coaches.
Oh, it didn't happen. Oh, I thought it happened. What's that? Bob, you said, I thought it was implemented this year. But he says you're right. We haven't done it in the future. What I'll do is I'll send you the research that I have on this from the state of New York and a couple of other states on the policies that they've set up on these funds. It's a little more complicated than people may think, just accepting money from people to pay for coaches and things like that. You're not going to have the Ku Klux Klan, or the Aryan Brothers or something like that start donating money to problems. So there's a little bit more to this than it meets the eye.
I don't think we have any of those groups who are donating.
That's not the point.
I can be pretty certain about that.
We do have an extensive donations policy, and I think it does address that as well as some of the other issues. We should talk about that when we discuss this on the agenda.
All right, can we call the question?
Yes. All right. If there are no further comments, all those in favor of approval of the spring coaches, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number C3, approval of appointment of the web page coordinator.
My question was, this function being taken over by another person now, and what do we have for funding on that? I didn't see any numbers in there. I'm just, I'll forget the question. I'll get an answer.
I think it's $1,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong, make sure it's wrong field.
All right,
Okay.
do I have a motion to approve C3?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, my question was, so this was grant funded then, huh?
No.
Oh, office
This part.
No.
Budget position.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
So this is this is a replacement. This is not a new hire, so to speak. I mean, this is,
Well, the person is a new hire that you approved last week that replaced someone who resigned, who was also doing the web coordinator piece. So now, on the agenda tonight, you're approving that web coordinator stipend.
All right, any further questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. All right, that brings us to C4,
Oh,
the approval of the resignation.
as long as we have, I've always questioned why we should have the approval of the resignation. I don't think we have anything to do about it. If somebody resigns, we can't say no. So from that perspective, there's really nothing to prove. However, I would suggest that, you know, for teachers and people that we should start performing audit exit interviews to get comments from people, and maybe have a special, you know, form that they fill out, you know, as to why, you know, what the reason was, and, you know, what conditions or whatever it was, as we go through the, you know, the resignation process or so forth. So that's my only comment on that.
Do I have a motion to approve C4?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All the- Motion passes. C5, no names on C5. Do I have a motion to approve C5?
second?
Mr. Mudge, while there are no names on this matter, did you have a question?
No, I guess I can't because there are no names. Mine has. Are there names? There are recommendations on here. Are these all like?
An executive item discussion, Mr. Mudge.
Okay. Okay, so this was, okay. My hard copy, I didn't distinguish that as a executive session item on it. My fault, I guess.
Mrs. Avanzato asked me if she wasn't in executive session, if she had to withdraw her motion, and I said no, that's not necessary. You can still vote on the matter whether you were in executive session or not. It's just there was more of a discussion in executive session if there were questions. So if there are no further questions, we have a motion on the table and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
Yeah, I didn't have a discussion, so I'll
Okay.
abstain.
That brings us to the unfinished business, and actually, I'll go back. We have the 2013-2014 school budget. Is there anything anyone wanted to bring up about that? You know, I'm jumping back here. Superintendent's report. Dr. Ajay, is there anything that you wanted to say on the superintendent's report?
I was just going to mention, even though Rachel wouldn't be too thrilled about it tonight, we did exceptionally well with our state test scores for our NECAP this past year, and I sent something out to the community this week, and I just wanted to reiterate that at our next meeting on March 11th, Dr. Humbert will go over the details on those scores.
All right, that brings us to the 2014-2015 budget. So our two big items here tonight are items number 5, B, and C, the budget, and also the CIP. So that should be where most of our discussion is on here tonight. I don't know if either one is going to be easier or not.
No, it's just, you know,
So, Dr. Ajay, how do you want to open up this conversation?
Well, I think probably a good way to do this would be to start with the operational budget and then move to the CIP. I know that the majority of the questions that came my way and recommendations from various people had concerns about the page that I gave out, including the proposed staffing reductions and additions. I just want to reiterate, and I've had a number of conversations with people on the stage about this already, but for the general public's purpose, the recommendations that I've made did not increase the general budget at all for staffing. There are a variety of places where I felt that we could reduce, and I felt that there were a number of places where in the budget that I needed additional assistance for certain kinds of things. Even though you have a total number in front of you that there's an addition of 3.25 FTEs, those are completely from the addition of the Davisville Academy, which is something that we've been planning now for 2 years, and that staff is paid for with the reductions in out-of-district tuition. So if you take those out of it, we have reduced by 3.25 staff and all of the money that goes along with that, which is quite substantial. And while we've made significant cuts, probably mostly to the high school, but in other places as well, at the elementary level, at Davisville Middle School, for instance, there have been some reductions. There are some smaller kinds of ads, some .2 additions in some places, some .5 clerks in other places, to handle some of the needs that, I and my administrative team have felt that we need to take care of. So I think that this is a very responsible approach, and it is an approach that addresses the goals that I have proposed to you earlier in the year and that the school committee has accepted, specifically with the staffing, the addition of the Davisville Academy. And some of my other goals are addressed in the CIP expenditures, so I'll save my comments for those a little bit later.
So what we need to do here by the end of this evening is we need to have some sort of number that we are going to submit to the town council for what will be our budget. We also need to get to what we're going to submit to the town council is our capital improvement plan. And Mrs. King, is there any other numbers that we're going to need to separately be voting on here tonight?
No, I just really need to know how the committee wants to start. We're either starting with the preliminary number that's in your book and then taking Dr. Auger's staffing adjustments and adding or subtracting, or we're taking the revised number that accepts all of his staffing adjustments and adding or subtracting. So I just want to make sure that we're very organized and that we know exactly what's getting added, subtracted, or whatnot, because the number tonight that you vote on is the number I have to send to the town. So I need to be personally, I need to be very methodical in how we do it and know what everybody's voting on and with a solid number.
Right, Mr. Busgarden, I see your hand up first.
I would like to start a discussion with Davisville Academy. Excuse me. Because that is a substantial part of what we're talking about here tonight. I mean, there's other parts that are important, but I think this is a large piece of the pie. We approved that about a year ago. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was April.
And I'm just going to ask a pointed question, because we haven't really been updated much since then. What is the timeline for this thing to actually be open and operational? Are we still looking at the original goal?
I just want to point out, I mean, we provided a number of updates. The latest on this is that we're waiting for some information back from our architect. We're in the process of going out for an RFP, and Mary, timeline in terms of when we expect to have an RFP in front of the committee?
Probably early April is when we'd be looking at having the bid numbers back and reviewing them from there.
And if that all goes as planned, does that still provide enough time to have it open by the
The optimal scenario is, yes, we could be open by September.
could be or will be?
Could be.
Could be. So we're really not sure.
Well, I mean,
you're
in the construction business, so you know.
Well, no, I realize
what you
there's a
can-
lot of
yeah, right.
things hanging out there that have to
Right.
come together. And I don't know. I guess the reason I'm asking is if we don't think this is going to happen for the 15th, for the start of school, then maybe those numbers shouldn't be in the budget.
Well, I think that there are a couple of options to be looking at here. If we're not ready to go by September, I still believe it's relatively easy to move the high school and middle school programming over to Davisville by the mid-year, January, if not sooner. Right now, we have our assistant superintendent. I've talked to a lot of you about how we're trying to make some adjustments in the assistant special education director, the PPS office and the hierarchy there. And right now, we have our assistant special ed director who is primarily, administrator for this clinical day program. She's covering the clerical work. She's covering all of the supervisory work all day. And ideally, what we're hoping to have is to have her available to do a number of other duties around the district. We did that as kind of a stopgap, and we were hoping to do so for 1 year. So, even though the program itself may not start at Davisville, I don't believe it's in the right place right now in the D building. It's not the optimal place. It's suitable for now, but it's not optimal. And I feel like, we have a goal to make this happen with good reason, and we need to continue to pursue it. And I wish these timelines could be faster. We're doing everything we can to push it, and we're going to shoot for September. As you recall, we did a lot of construction last year on a very similar timeline to where we are now. And those are bigger projects. So this can still be done for September. And regardless, some of these items are needed even if they go to the D building. I'd say the only thing that wouldn't be needed would be the nurse for the first, say, half of the year if we decide to move the program after half the year. But right now, I could use a clerk in that building. Right now, I could use better supervision in that building. So, I'm advocating for those pieces.
I said Mrs. Clerkin and I took a tour of the D building in around October, and I could see where the program would be more optimal in regular classroom space that you could have over DE and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. I hope I'm not being misunderstood. I'm not saying scrap the program.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm not saying can it. I mean, I was
right. I know you've been a big advocate for it. I'm just getting. I'm as impatient as anybody about the whole thing, but I feel like we really need to stay on course with this and try to meet the original timeline. The sooner we can get established in Davisville, the sooner we have the proper space for all of this to happen and for a lot of other things to happen, including, we've been interested in making this program available to other districts and kids to tuition in. That's pretty much impossible in the D building.
Right. And again, I'm not saying to, when I mean postpone it, I mean if, for us to delay the staffing piece of this until the building is open. I'm not saying don't push ahead with getting Davisville ready for the academy. I'm not saying that keep them in the D building forever. I'm saying just until that building, if we don't think that building is going to be ready, that's fine. Then let's just postpone the staffing portion of that pertained to the building.
If I could piggyback on your point, I'd be okay with that if it only were to include the nurse for that piece. Because the nurse, if we're at the D building, I can utilize the nurse from the high school. The supervisory pieces, which are paid for with the reallocation of funds from the current social work and school psychologists that we have, that's already kind of covered anyway. Those are the things I really feel we cannot do without, whether with D building or at Davisville. And the clerk is something that I would very much like to have even in the D building. There's a need for that extra person to handle all of these clerical duties that right now is really thrust upon one person, and that is the Assistant Special Education Director, and it limits how much else she's available to do for the district. And that, because we're, holding off on the nurse piece, that would still save us considerably from what we're looking at now. That's a good chunk of this. That's actually about the largest chunk, next to the social worker supervisor. Pretty much the same money.
Mr. Jones, sorry.
Thank you. No, I agree with John's point, and I guess my feeling is that, okay, so if the point is we're going to drive ahead and we are where we are, from a budgeting standpoint, I again find it problematic that we're covering some of these additions with contracted services, but there's no guarantee going forward. I can look at the sheet that we're provided by legal counsel in terms of constantly being in legal process about outplacements and not outplacements, and your contractual offsets are a one-year offset. They don't cover that adding FTEs over time come with it benefits increases, structural. We're adding structural increases over time when we grow FTEs. I would submit that, whether we're ready or not, and if the decision is to drive forward, and it is what it is, that we as a committee should say there should be no net growth, that we should just eliminate 3.25 FTEs to be determined by, recommendations from the superintendent. That way you don't have any issues in terms of structural issues going forward. And if the decision is, you need these people now, whether they're in Davisville or not, you have permanent saving offsets for them, not one-year offsets, not hopefully offsets that occur year to year based on kids that come in and out and decisions of parents and other things. So I believe we're just postponing what's an inevitable decision down the road, and that we should just go ahead and have a zero net FTE growth in the district to reflect the declining enrollment, to reflect that I think there's efficiencies that can be found, and just to not worry that we're creating a structural points down the road. I mean, we already know we have potential pension settlement thing hanging over us. Who knows what that's going to cause? We do know that whenever it hits and however it hits, it's probably going to be a cost to our town, which of course cascades back to our portion of the town. So my recommendation would be is, if we're not going to delay going forward and put these forward, is that we at least decrease the staffing by 3.25 FTEs. And I would make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right, so there is a motion on the table to decrease the FTEs by 3.25. That is not what the superintendent has recommended. Go ahead, Dr. O'Shea.
A couple of points come to mind. It's important to talk about context here. The 3.25 FTEs that we're talking about for Davisville were proposed to you over a year ago, and a lot has been given to you to show you that overall it is a cost savings, particularly when you consider the fact that the creation of the program is to bring in the excessive cost, to rein in the excessive cost of out-of-district tuitions. And so the other point of context is that an FTE is not the same as an FTE is the same as an FTE. Are we talking about administrator FTEs, teacher FTEs, clerk FTEs, TA FTEs? They're all very different. So while there's an addition of 3.25 FTEs at the bottom of the page, when you do the math, the money is the same. There's no increase in funding for staff. So the proposal that I've done has, decreased more in the higher pay FTEs, and it has allowed me to propose other smaller areas where there's an important need for a part-time clerk, for instance, or for, a .2 teacher to fill in a particular gap in certain places, so that the deletions are more expensive than the additions. And the remaining piece of it is with money that we already know we're going to get savings from the out-of-district tuitions. So, I just, want to reiterate that what you're proposing is not my proposal. If it's what you want to vote on, that is your prerogative. But I caution everybody to stay in tune with our goals and to, move ahead toward, they're good goals. They will do us well, both financially, and they'll do good things for kids. And I think we need to be cognizant of that.
Mr. Mudge.
First of all, I'd like to say, yeah, we had a plan we had asked for about a year ago, but quite frankly, I don't see that there's sufficient information for me to really analyze whether we've got savings here or not. I know one estimate you have here is incorrect. I mentioned before is that in this year's budget, you have $47,000 for Davisville as expenditures for electricity, natural, gas and plumbing and all the other good stuff. Okay, and I assume that's janitorial, although I could be wrong. Yes. Okay, but nonetheless, if you go back and look at the history of Davisville, okay, you'll find that it was significantly higher than that, probably in the $150,000 a year range. So I don't know, what's happened there. So we need to tighten up on that. And number two is when I look at the budget this year, where can I see savings in fiscal year 15? See, I can't see savings in fiscal year 13. I have no information that tells me we're saving in fiscal year 15, because when I look at the budget, for example, the out-of-placement cost this year is going up by $144,000 from $1.07 million to $1.2 million. That's the non-public private schools, that I guess some of these children will be coming from. And on the other hand, I see that our alternative education program for the high school, okay, is going up $275,000. Wickford Middle School is going up $275,000. So overall, from fiscal year 10, I believe it is, we've gone from like $500,000 for alternative programs in our district to $1,155,000 this year.
Mr. Mudge,
Yeah.
alternative learning at Wickford Middle School is going up $275,000?
That's what I
I
have
don't know
here.
where you're getting your information.
I'm getting them, well, I think maybe we should let's look at the
We
budget.
took the alternative
stand to be
learning
corrected.
program from Wickford and turned it into a clinical day program, which is the program we're talking about.
Well, precisely. So I'm trying to put all these together. I'm trying to say, what does this program at Davisville Elementary encumber? And where are the students coming from? We have $400,000 in the budget. Your budget, not mine, your budget shows $400,000 for Wickford Middle School. Now, you want to know the page it's on? Let's look at the page. Let's go to your budget. Anybody cares to help me? Way in the back. And let's go to page... page, I don't know the page number on this thing. But as I go through ALP Wickford Middle School, it says $400,000.
What page is that again?
John, I'd like to tell you, but it doesn't have a page. It doesn't have a page number on it. Okay.
Line item detail, John.
Okay.
What section's it in?
All the way in the back.
Line item detail.
All the way in the back.
Oh, line item details. Oh, okay.
The reason for that is because the DE expenses are allocated 50% to the high school, 25% to Wickford, and 25% to Davisville.
Well,
Because Davisville Elementary is not a school, it would be a program, so they have to get allocated, all those expenses have to get allocated to where they're coming from. So those students right now are estimated 50% from the high school, 25% from
thank
Wickford
you.
Middle, and 25% from
But you see,
Davisville
what
Middle.
I would like, thank you. What I'd like to see is a whole damn course wrapped up someplace, because it's all over the place. okay? So,
That's your UCOA numbers.
no, those are your numbers, man. You check your budget, because it's in your budget, and
I
it's
know,
not
but they
fake.
have to be allocated that way
$400,000.
because of UCOA.
Huh?
They have to be allocated like that
I
because of UCOA.
understand it, but I don't care. What I'm caring about is what's in the program, and what are all the program costs. Now you're telling me some's over here, some is over here, some's up there. What is the total conglomerate, cost for this program? Now, all these kids coming from the high school, we're not going to have any kids at the high school, so the enrollment at the high school is going
Mr.
down.
Mudge, on several occasions,
Okay.
I've given the committee a rundown of the staffing of the clinical day program, and I've given you transition documents that showed, where they came from, what they're doing now, where the costs are for what's in the D building, and what we plan on the cost for going to Davisville. I've given you all of that, more
I
than
don't-
once.
no, it's not been adequate, and I've said that before.
Point of order, Madam Chair, point
Yes,
of order,
what is
please.
your point of
I would
order?
like to ask that you ask committee members just to retain a tone so that we can have a
Oh,
civil
thank you,
discussion.
Linda.
Sorry, but I don't want the yelling, so please, just speak and don't yell.
All right, I'm going to remind the committee that we have a motion and a second on the table. So our discussion should be strictly on the motion on the table.
Well,
Now,
they're all interrelated.
Hold on. Now, our point here tonight is to make sure that we get to a point where we're submitting a number to the town council and a budget. And part of the problem with the motion here tonight is that we will not have a number. We've merely said that we are wanting to reduce FTEs, but we don't say what type of FTEs. So that's going to be problematic in getting us to any sort of a number, because we haven't designated to the superintendent as to what sort of FTEs, and we've had these discussions since January, and this would have been a better time to have brought up in one of those meetings to say, I want to cut this, so that when we came here tonight, we had had a specific number. But that not being done, I would say we need to get to a number, and that is where I'm cautioning the committee that you need to make sure that it is a number and not just a budget that doesn't have a specific number. Mrs. Avanzato.
I hadn't finished that, Chairman.
Yes, I will call on you again, Mrs. Avanzato.
I understand your point regarding coming up with a number. I don't think that should constrain this committee tonight from being able to make a motion. Mr. Jones can figure out what that would equate to in terms of dollars, if that's what people...
Well, I actually, no, because we haven't said if this is a teacher.
He can say,
a
he's going to
clerk.
make a motion, and that'll be his motion.
Well, but what I'm saying is,
Now you say.
that's not as easy as it sounds, just to say, I'm going to eliminate this person, and so therefore this means
It's a
this amount.
superintendent's job. He's going to say, eliminate X amount of dollars. It's then the superintendent's job to come back to us and tell us what he's going to do. But I want to make some general comments on the situation at DE and what you said earlier, Phil. I think the committee is fully in support, and I want to continue on the path that we started down with DE. And we have goals for that. That was an important goal, and we are, I mean, we're going about as fast as we can, and the RFP process is starting. It's going to take a little bit of time. I think the sense of a lot of committee members is that we probably could find some areas, FTEs somewhere. We're not the experts, you are, so I would prefer, if we're going to do something, to leave it up to your discretion to come back to this committee with recommendations, if that ends up being supported in a vote, and not to pigeonhole you, taking, us off the path of DE or anything else. Leave you with the latitude and the freedom to decide.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Mudge, I do see your hand. Mr.
Thank you.
Mudge and then Mr. Busgarden.
Yeah, I think Linda's absolutely correct there. I think in the past, Chairman, you've said we shouldn't micromanage the superintendent, we should make those cuts, and that's well taken. But see, my issue is, I don't have the whole ballgame. Now, maybe I'm thick, I'm Polish, half Polish, so I understand that. But when I come to look at this program and I say, we're going to have at Davisville Elementary School, high school kids, middle school kids, kindergarten kids, middle school and elementary kids. I'm trying to say to myself, how many kids are there, okay? How much time they spend in there, and what's the overall cost? But these numbers are blended all over the place. So the only numbers that I have that can tell me or give me a sense of what this is going to cost this year is two numbers taken from your budget, okay? And it says, alternative school programs. I assume that that's the ALP. That's what the UCOA says. That's fine, okay? I assume that money is going to be, I assume that 1.5 million is going into that program. But on the same token, we're increasing our out-of-district to the public, non-public private schools for the same kids that are supposed to be coming into the district. We're increasing that by 1.2 million. So when I look at your budget, I'm saying, I don't really know what's going on here, okay? It's not clear to me the number of kids that are going to be in this program this year, number one, and what the overall costs are. And, we haven't looked at this thing and put it in these different modules, if you may, to find out what's going to be going on at Davisville. What are the number of kids? I've never seen the total number of kids, the total number of teachers. Where are all the classroom teachers going to be for these people? Are they going to go back to the high school?
How about if we let Dr. Ajay
Okay.
Respond?
Okay, so
Mr. Mudge, just a few weeks ago, I gave you the latest version of that, with all of the answers of the questions you just asked. I've given you a spreadsheet after spreadsheet, staffing analysis, how many staff, what they're going to be doing. I've done this. So to say, no matter what I give you, Mr. Mudge, you're going to say you don't have enough information. So let's just cut to that chase, okay?
that's not correct.
Well,
That's not correct. Just tell me right now then, sir.
Well,
okay, we're talking
You
about...
mentioned the number of times that you haven't been looking
Okay.
at your notes, but we
I haven't,
provided you this information.
How many children are going to non-private
Keep this
schools?
civil.
$1.2 million. How many children are going there?
I don't
okay.
have that in front of me.
Okay, well, listen, if you got 30 kids, I assume that, let's just say it's $50,000 a child, how many kids is that? 50,000 into 1.2 million. So how many kids are going out of district? And then how many kids does this represent? I assume that this 06 represents the Davisville Elementary investment this year of $1.5 million. How many kids does that encompass? I have not seen that. And I have not seen that says this is what's going to happen this year. And I haven't seen anything about exactly what we're going to charge for any kids coming into the program from out of district. We haven't been any part of that discussion at all. Okay? So there's insufficient information here to make any information. And I told you before, you're underestimating your facilities, and I don't know how many other things here. Okay? Janitorial services. How much have we spent already, Dr. Auger, okay, over there since beginning of the year? Have we spent any money already over there out of our budget?
On what?
At Davisville Elementary School.
Davisville Elementary School is open. The Office of Family Learning is there. We have not spent anything on the ALP Academy for DE.
I just want to say, how much did we spend in this fiscal year, okay, or fiscal year 13 or 14 on Davisville Elementary School, putting in air conditioning, putting in wiring, and all that other good stuff?
Nothing.
You didn't spend anything?
Not on DE, no. DE was not part of the bond. We
The
haven't
last
spent
two,
anything
we haven't
over
spent
there.
any money over in DE, okay?
Oh,
Okay, no air conditioning we put in there, window air conditioning units and things like that?
we put a couple in when these
Oh.
principals moved over there and they came back out.
Mm-hmm.
Because the principals moved there. That's a whole different scenario. Those principals moved out of their 5 buildings that we closed to do the bond work.
Well, now,
That doesn't have anything to
I'm
do
just
with
wondering,
Davisville Academy.
How much did that cost, by the way?
All that information got forwarded to you in August. I
Okay,
can
well, I didn't
re-forward
see it.
all of it.
Well,
I had a
so-
spreadsheet that had every invoice attached to
Yeah,
it.
How many window units?
Wait, one person at a
Okay,
time
so,
here.
so even with that,
the floor.
okay, in addition to all this, we've got to put in, you're asking not only the 1.2 million, okay, from the town, everybody else, but now you've got on top of this, which rolls into this Wi-Fi issue we have, expenditure. We have like, what, $400,000? What are we asking for Wi-Fi to go over there?
The Wi-Fi for DE is part of the 1.2 million. It is not part of the Wi-Fi wireless bond.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying. Why isn't the Wi-Fi bond part of that?
Because it's not allowed to be, because at the time that the bond was taken, it's not, and still right now, as we sit here, it is not a school. It's not being operated as a school, and the state would not allow it to be part of the bond.
Okay, so overall then, so our investment for the, and I'm sorry, I don't have that number right here, it was what, like $400,000 or $350,000 for?
For Wi-Fi for the district is...
No, for the building, the IT stuff for the building?
Yeah, I think it was 400,000 we had down there.
400,000, okay? It is 400,000. So, I mean, the numbers just haven't come together to me. Now, maybe, as I say, I'm Polish and I don't understand these things, but I don't have a clear picture of everything that's going on there, the numbers of people are going to be there, the numbers of teachers that are going to be there, okay, on a typical day. And you're suggesting that we're going to move children from Wickford Middle School up there in the tune of, it's costing us, $400,000. I assume they're going to reside there. I'm not sure. Is that the plan?
All right.
No, I'm asking the question. Are all these kids going to reside there?
Mr. Mudge, first of all, any students who were at Wickford Middle School are currently at the D building. We've given presentations about that already. We've talked about the number of kids who are there, and I've even offered to take school committee members on tours. So, I've been very forthcoming with all the information about this, and Dr. Pizzullo has been before you a couple of times, and she's here tonight. So we're looking at a couple of middle school classrooms, we're talking about a couple of high school classrooms, and a couple of elementary classrooms. We're looking at moving the central office special education administration to that building as well, and having, the staffing for those particular classrooms. And that would include, obviously, because it's a specialized program, there'd be a number of, special ed teachers, special education teaching assistants, social workers, psychologists, be headed by the assistant PPS director, and have a clerk and a nurse.
Well, I like to see all those numbers on a piece of paper. because
Okay, but they've been provided, so you should look in your previous emails.
Okay, maybe you can send them again.
I'm going to call
Okay.
Mr. Busgarden.
Thank you, Ms. Page. See, I thought that by us not being specific was the best way to go about it. Giving him, giving direction like we did, 3.5 FTEs, and then instead of us picking and making the personnel decisions, which we should not be making. As a school committee, we should not be making personnel decisions. We either approve or decline Dr. Auger's recommendations. So, but if you would prefer it to be a number, a dollar number, I would like to remove my second on Bob's motion.
Well, it has to be a dollar number because you have to vote on a
That's what I
specific
just said.
dollar number tonight.
He's removing his second.
I'm removing
For
my
that reason.
second so we can discuss this from a different angle.
All right, so there is still the motion on the floor with no second.
I will withdraw my original motion. It was made with the same understanding and with, I thought, guidance from the chair that said not to specifically pick positions. So,
Right, and that's where I encourage folks this week to make sure you talk to the superintendent so that if we need to
So
come
I
up
would
with a
defer-
different number.
I would defer to,
The budget meeting's for to make motions. I don't understand why it's a problem.
I would defer to Mrs. Avanzano.
We have to see that this week.
So, or
Mr. Busgarden, did you have another motion?
Well, we're trying to figure that out right now, actually.
All right, so this could be one of the things that you could,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'd like to comment.
go ahead, Mr. Busgarden, go ahead.
Now, granted, this doesn't happen all the time. I mean, we do this once a year, so, some weeks I'm lucky I remember what date it is, let alone remember last week, last year's process. But I don't recall us giving the superintendent actual dollar numbers. I thought we talked more general and then let him make the decision on how to achieve that goal.
That was because we weren't on the last night that we have to vote on this budget. We're like at 0 hour right now. So if you're asking him to go back and look at stuff, there's no time to do that. We need a number tonight.
Right.
So it's not like we're asking you for a number, but what we're saying is that we have to have a number. You have to vote on a number that goes to the town council.
So what we've done before when we vote on this is we give it a certain number, and basically, and then we say that this is the total appropriation from the town of North Kingstown, the state of Rhode Island, other sources listed in the budget book.
Right, I remember.
And so basically, that's what we're looking for here tonight. Not, I understand from what the committee has said here tonight that you do not want staff to be something that, even though it's revenue neutral, you don't want an increase in staff. And so I'm not sure exactly how the committee wants to do that, because since we don't know the number to reduce it by, but one of the ideas is that you could always approve the number with the understanding that you know that there could be people who are cut. Mrs. Avanzato.
I'm not making the motion yet, but I'm contemplating making a motion approving the superintendent's revised draft minus or with additional cuts of $240,000. And I'd like to get the superintendent's response, I guess, before I make the motion.
I want to say that I appreciate the approach, the comments made. I felt all along that, it's important that a superintendent, whether it's me or anybody else, be allowed, because of the close workings with the administration, all to kind of figure out where the pieces belong, and it's more of a school committee kind of role to oversee, the budget number. So I think that's an appropriate approach. Doing this minus 240 would be very difficult. I hate even bringing up a number, but I think, as a starting point, particularly before we go to the town, I feel like if I absolutely have to, I can find like around in the neighborhood of $100,000 of additional cuts. I prefer not to. I propose what I propose for a reason, and I really feel like I've cut significantly already. And it may take me a little bit of time to figure out exactly where that $100,000 would come from. It may come off of this list, and it may be other things that we start to kind of get creative about and, figure out other combinations that would seem to work, that are kind of coming to light now that maybe didn't come to light when I originally proposed this a month and a half ago. So that number for me, I'd feel more comfortable if it were closer to $100,000. But I appreciate the sentiment.
I know that you had said, well, we came up with that thinking $70,000 for the nurse's position, which you won't perhaps need immediately.
I would comment, though, on the nurse's position. I mean, the superintendent may come back and say, it's ready to go 1 September, or it's ready to go 1 December,
Yeah.
and we're going to incur a nurse cost. My feeling all along is we should avoid adding structural issues to the budget. And the point is that the savings is partially based on 117, which is hoping that we have that many savings from students coming back. While I think overall, one of the reasons I supported this initiative is I think in general, if it's successful, you will realize that. I think it's very problematic to base some of these on the one-time savings from a contract, which is going to not accrue over time, yet adding the FTEs net in the district is going to accrue structural increases over time, and an assumption in year one that there'll be 117,000. I think it's more responsible to say that you're basically taking 200-something thousand of non-personnel offsets and saying, let's find 200,000 of personnel offsets. That way, both the committee and you don't have to worry about arguing when the nurse starts, about whether you need a clerk on 1 July or defer to 1 January. And I do think there are, based on the numbers you provided, abilities to really look at course enrollments and other things and find that number. And I think we're sort of kidding ourselves to say, to tinker around here and there and go, we're not going to be doing this drill again in April and May. So my point would be is let's start with a number that's more realistic and shows that from a structural issue, we are offsetting from a personnel standpoint roughly $200,000, so we don't get this issue from the town council, which we already know we will. I mean, they have flat out said that to us, so we're kidding ourselves to walk around and say we're going to add one-time structural things and ignore that it's going to compound over time. So while I appreciate the difficulty, if we need a number, I mean, let's just take the responsible thing to do now and add offset personnel with personnel. So if we're adding roughly, and based on the numbers, it's 216,000 of increased personnel costs from FTEs, find 216,000 or an approximate amount from personnel lines in the budget.
So right now,
If that were a motion, I would second that.
So here is what I would say. Right now, the budget that we have in front of us is, it's the $60,080,682. However, you have to minus from that 25,609 because that is what our state aid has been reduced. So the number that we'd be approving if everything was in here is $60,055,083. Am I correct on that, Mrs. King?
Yes.
So.
60,055,083.
And that's the revised?
60,055. No, that is the revised of what is in the book currently.
That's what I'm
So
asking.
if you are taking the 216, you need to subtract that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Off the 60,055,083.
Right. And
Reasonable.
so then what you're looking at,
I know. Exactly.
59,855. I think it's 59, right, Mary?
59,839.
839.
Oh, wait, three. It was
Oh, I just-
216,000 even, or did you do a different?
I just did 200. I just made it,
Or 200?
yeah.
That makes it easier.
It's 59,855,083.
so if you're making a motion for that, then you would make a motion to approve the superintendent's budget as presented in the budget book for a total appropriation of
Well, no, that's not
59
correct.
Listen.
We're not done.
I'm not
Please
done
let her
with my
finish.
motion. Please listen. $59,855,083 from the Town of North Kingston, State of Rhode Island, and other sources as listed in the budget book.
But we're just giving a number now. We're not done giving numbers, so
I just took the number that is in the budget book minus the 200,000, and that was what I said that would be the motion if it is to be made.
well,
Mrs. Avanzado.
I'll add another motion to make a
I'd like
couple
to-
other cuts.
Avanzado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to make a motion to approve the superintendent's budget in the amount of $59,855,083.
Yeah, but there's some other cuts we want to talk about also.
Go ahead, Mrs. Avanzado.
from the town, okay, from the town of North Kingstown, state of Rhode Island, and other sources listed in the budget book.
Do you need a second to that motion?
I would second that.
Now, Bill, we can
Now we
talk,
can
we can
discuss.
talk further and maybe amend or whatever, Bill. I'm not trying to stop the conversation.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
see what I'm saying, Lynn, is, I think the 240,000 you put in, we should vote on that, and then whatever the total number is, it becomes a total number. You shouldn't have to link that to a bottom line right now.
Have to approve a budget amount tonight.
Huh?
Yeah, we just have to approve a
Absolutely.
budget
The
amount
motion-
tonight that we're going to
No
send
matter
over
what
to
the
the...
motion is, you need to approve a figure
I
tonight.
understand that, Madam Chair.
We can do it in
All we need to
stages.
do is deal with this one at 240,000, yes or no, and then go on to the next one. And then we'll add them all up and take them from the top.
Remember, we are not until May, okay? In May, we will get our real budget, and that's when we will have to cut further. So I do caution the committee about continuing down this road of doing lots of cuts where we really don't have any
Excuse me?
recommendations from the...
Excuse me?
Let me
Are
finish,
you
Mr.
trying
Mudge.
to stonewall
No.
this school committee?
No, there is a
Cautioning
motion
the
on the
committee.
table and a second. So I am counseling you that if you want to continue to cut, and we don't have any recommendations,
Yes, you
that
do.
that may not be from the superintendent who runs the school, you're treading on new ground.
What are we,
And it
potted
may
plants?
be
We don't
that
have a
you should
comment?
wait until we get more recommendations before we start sending things over to the town council, that we don't have a budget that we can even support any further than what we've already done.
Can we just follow the process? Mrs. Avanzano said she'd like to make the motion, put $240,000 in the budget, period, and vote on that, and then we can move on to the next cut.
She made the motion, she did, and Mr. Buscarden has seconded.
It's not 240, Bill, it's 200.
So can I be
I'm sorry.
clear here, too? We started off with our preliminary number that's in your book dated January 21st, $60,080,692. From that, we reduced the state aid by $25,609, and now we're mulling over another $200,000 for a total general fund budget to go to the town of $59,855,083.
Yeah, but I don't want
That
to...
is correct.
I don't want to make a motion that that's it.
Motion has been made.
Excuse me, the comment, that Linda's, I know what Linda's trying to do, but I'm not supporting that $59 million budget, because I want to put some others in here, so I don't want anybody to think that this is over, Linda. That's my point.
I have a question about process.
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Avanzado, and then Mr.
My
Buscarden.
question is, if other members have something they wish to put on the table or add or make a motion on, can they make it as an amendment, or would it be preferable to withdraw that motion that I just made
Here is what I'd like you to do, because we've got to send a number tonight.
eventually?
Vote on that number, and then if somebody wants to do additional cuts to that number,
The
they
number
can then
changes.
do it, but at least you have now a number on the table.
That's been approved.
So,
Okay.
right, if you vote on that number, and then if somebody else wants to cut another 100 or whatever, it would take a second, and you could go from there, but at least you have a number approved.
It doesn't stop the process.
Doesn't stop the process.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that. Should know that.
If there's no further discussion, would the committee like to vote?
Yes, please call the question, ma'am.
Okay. Lorraine, could we please have a roll call vote?
John Buscarden.
Yes.
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes, with the understanding that we can add additional cuts to the budget.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, so we do have a motion of what to send on to the town council. You know, at this point,
Madam Chair?
yes, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to not change the bottom line number we just approved, but to increase the revenue line on tuition from other, I believe, I don't have it right in front of me, but
From
other individuals,
sources.
yes, from 15,000 by adding 10,000, and thus decrease the number from local appropriations by the similar amount. Will not change the bottom line expenditure number to reflect the fact that we are projecting the same preschool enrollment, but raising tuition and our actuals in that category have ranged in the mid-20s, so to budget 10,000 less than our actuals when we know we're increasing tuition and not projecting a decrease in enrollment seems to me to defy math. So I think we should just go ahead and recognize revenue that we are projecting to have and that we historically have achieved. And so that would raise that revenue line by 10,000 and decrease local appropriations by the offsetting amount.
Is that a motion?
I'll second that.
Could you just restate that motion one more time, Mr. Jones?
Yes. It would be to raise tuition from, is it other sources, Mary?
Other individuals, yeah.
Other individuals by $10,000 and to decrease the local appropriations revenue by $10,000.
So I'd just like to clarify that on page 19, you're looking at making the number that it comes across there, tuition from individuals from $15,000 to $25,000.
Correct.
Mrs. King, would you like to comment?
No, that's fine. So it's really just a switch from all other funding, increases all other funding, and decreases town property taxes. Yep, got it.
So that's an okay assumption.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Mrs. Avanzado, do you have something according to that motion?
Yes, pertaining to that motion. I just want to recognize Bob's efforts and work on some of these issues, detailed work on these issues, and also Mary and Phil's responsiveness. And I know some of it's last minute, and you know that's how it is. It's not fun, but and I appreciate your responses. You guys have been excellent. You've been so forthcoming with all the information everybody's asked for, and it's continual questions, but you've been right there with the answers. And so I want to just recognize both the Budget Subcommittee and the administration for the efforts that they put in during this budget season.
All right, so if there are no further comments, then we have a motion on the table in a second.
Call it.
Lorraine, could we take a roll call vote?
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
John Biscardi.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mudge.
I'd like to make a motion to reduce our supplies by $100,000, the general supply account. I will pass these documents down, what I have.
Okay, we don't need to make any other line item budgets as of tonight. We have.
Excuse me, I just made a motion, okay?
I know, and I'm just advising the committee before I hear a second that that is not necessarily the thing that we need to do tonight. And we also want to be very conscious that we always want to be looking to the superintendent and Mrs. King for a recommendation when we make these budget cuts.
Certainly,
So
that's
I would
why
ask
we're here.
the committee to think long and hard before we second this motion and we don't have a recommendation. You know, that this is something that we should wait until, it would be my counsel that we wait as this can be a further discussion item. We do have a bottom line. We have made an adjustment here. It's the sort of thing of that at some point we will probably need to cut more once we hear from the town council, and then it will be the sort of thing of we are supposed to be voting on the superintendent's recommendations is how the appropriate means of altering our budget is. At this point, we don't have a recommendation from the superintendent, and so that's why I would counsel the committee in getting a second.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to discuss reducing $100,000 from the supply general line item 561. Okay? We don't even have to take a motion on it. You want to discuss it? You don't want to vote on it? Fine. I've looked at this again, and I submitted this to you folks, okay, with respect to the supply line item. The specific supply line of the general supplies is going up by 48%, okay, from $391,000 to $578,000. It's 48%. I'm recommending that we reduce that by $100,000 to $87,000, and that's still a a 24% increase. On that sheet that I've given you, and I didn't have a whole bunch of them here, but you can see across the line that this sheet that I have here, for example, shows that across the board, the superintendent's supply line went up 27.8%. The general supply line for program curricula went up by $18,000. The supply line for others, whatever that is up 60%. Other supplies, 2,300 is up 40%, but that's only $1,100. Technology supplies are up 62%. Okay, and I'd like to let you know that the technology supplies that you're referring to here, and I stand to be corrected, these are not related, okay, to these are data processing technology supplies. They are not general supplies for kids and blah, 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 blah. These are administrative supplies, okay? And that went up 24% to $63,000. You can see transportation supplies went up 118% to $2,500. Building supplies. However, we can see here that Fishing Cove supplies are going up 51%, from $28,000 to $42,000. Forest Park is going up 62%. Hamilton Ed, 59%.
What do you allow the superintendent to respond, Mr. Mudge?
And well, I'd like to finish. So, I guess
I just want to point out, one of the reasons that there are some increases there, Bill. I think you realize over the past, every year that I've been here, and this is my 5th year now, we have cut significantly to supply lines, and it is strangling us. Our principals are very concerned about not having, and it's a general term. It sounds innocent. It doesn't sound like people. It doesn't sound like programs, but it translates to needed things that from curriculum items like GEMSNet to all kinds of things in our curriculum. And we're trying to get to a place that puts us on par with other districts. And it's still a very responsible number. But what you're seeing in that increase is that we have cut year after year to these lines to a point where we're having a hard time just regular operations. And I'll let Mary go into some more detail on that.
I did an analysis that was with RIDE data. So the last data that was on the RIDE website was in 2012 year-end. And I looked at Coventry, South Kingstown, Charahoe, Narragansett, East Greenwich, and Exeter, West Greenwich. And we were second lowest per pupil. The average of all of those, including us, was $111 per pupil. So we had Coventry at $89 per pupil. We were at $95. South Kingstown $110, Charahoe $111, Narragansett $115, East Greenwich $126, and Exeter West Greenwich $130. And it's an area that the principals are always needing. We have GEMSNet kits that come out of that number. So it's not just thinking that it's a box of pens, but it's amazing, the stuff that is needed for these students. And the numbers that we have every single year, that's always the well that we go to, is let's cut supplies. We're looking for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Oh, let's cut supplies. And so I thought that the analysis on what the other districts were doing would give us a good idea of what, how low we really are.
Yes, may I comment on that, please? I also looked at those things. And, one guy's supply in North Kingstown isn't another guy's supply in Jamestown or someplace else. If you look at the UCOA data, okay, is there something funny over there?
Yeah, I have no idea what that means, that one guy's supply is not another guy's supply.
Oh, yeah,
do we pay different prices for pens?
Well, a pound of sugar, maybe in my shopping bag, but, when you go to the market, that might not be in your supply. It might be potatoes or something. So if you look at that in more detail, you'll find out there's a whole host of other items that come under, the line of supplies, okay? But I would also like to focus on the fact that in fiscal year 13, the revised budget we had, we actually reduced that budget by some $320,000. I don't know why, from an expenditure standpoint, we had a surplus. So in fact, we had a budget, okay, for supplies of $2.3 million. Okay, 3.5. We actually spent $2 million. And I don't think the school committee told you to cut $300,000. Okay? So,
Great, we're going to...
Excuse me, I'm not finished yet.
Well,
Okay,
then
I
wrap
just
wrap
wanna-
it up, Mr. Budge. It is the sort of thing, if we do have a number on the table, we have to vote on the capital improvement here tonight.
Excuse me, you said we could introduce these things, ma'am.
You could also back.
Okay?
I cautioned the committee about bringing further items
Okay,
that don't have the
fine.
superintendent's recommendation.
If you don't want to bring it up, Madam Chairman, if you don't feel we should bring it up, then fine, then
It's
I won't
not
bring
that
it
I
up.
don't feel it. I think you need to pass these things to the superintendent and get a recommendation, whether he recommends it or he does not. And at this point, you have
If
not
the
made
superintendent
the
would show up at the
recommendation,
budget committee
and he
meetings,
did-
he would have got this recommendation. He didn't show up at the last 3 meetings. He
And-
would have got these.
and
Excuse
He
me.
has told you he does not recommend this.
He did not come to our budget meetings.
And
Okay,
just
and he had an
told you
opportunity to come to those.
He did not recommend your cutting of supplies.
Excuse me,
Mr.
you said that we should bring this to the attention of the
Madam Chair.
superintendent, and we did.
I'd just like to refresh committee's memory that, this is just the preliminary number that's going to the town. History will tell us that they're going to come back with a slightly, if not dramatically different number, and we'll have the opportunity to look at things again, Bill, and
I
make...
agree with you, but see the suspicion now of the town council, they're going to probably say, hey, guys, you didn't scrub your budget, And so I'll just give it to the town council and let them do that, that's all. But I think I'm just trying to put forward a good, what I think is best for the town, the taxpayers, and everybody else, and we scrubbed it, that's all, John. Okay, and you're right, we'll bring it to the town council then.
We also want to make sure that we do what is best for the students.
Always do.
All right, Mr. Jones.
Yes, I would like to make actually 2 motions. I'll start with what I hopefully is an easy one, and that is that the committee approve the bottom line numbers for restricted funds and enterprise funds as recommended by the superintendent on page 24.
I'll second that
No
motion.
adjustments.
I will second that motion with the caveat that we will receive the superintendent's budget within the next month.
So then what your motion is, Mr. Jones, is approving the grant budget
And the
of
enterprise.
$1,751,853,
Yes.
and the enterprise fund that includes food service of $994,885. Is that correct?
At each step.
$994,885
That's what I'm looking at.
on the
Correct.
enterprise.
Correct, but if I may amend my own motion, is to make them
You can just make a new motion. Nobody has
Then
seconded.
then I would make my first motion, which is to approve the restricted funds of $1,751,853.
So moved. Second.
I second.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would then make the motion to approve the enterprise fund budget of $994,885 as recommended by the superintendent.
Second.
May I make a
There's a
comment to
motion
that?
and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I do. If you look at what the town council did last year, they approved each one of those as separate line items in their budget. At the sports camps, the food service, the athletic receipts, each one of those in the last 2 years was appropriated by the council as part of their process, and I thought I had a piece of paper here to give you that. So keeping with that, I would ask that that list be approved as it is, because they are, each of the funds are different.
I think that's what Mr. Jones just said.
Oh, okay. So, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
My last motion would be to discuss on the revenue side, point of adding 39,000 into the gift and donation line. And my rationale for that is I believe we're now in the third fiscal year of a contracted service with an understanding that that service would be self-funded. And so I believe in keeping with that, if we're going to fund that expense, which is currently we are, we should recognize at least that investment will recognize offsetting revenue, which I believe has been the superintendent's point for that, having that contract.
I would second that motion.
The only thing that I would say about that is that likely that would come in the form of a grant, Mr. Jones. And the grant from Career Tech, the $50,000 grant from Career Tech was a grant, so.
Right, but that's a
I would-
restricted grant that has to be used on a certain thing. So we were, I believe the point was that the position would be self-funded, not for other uses. So I will make the point that an alternative motion could be to cut 39,000 from that contracted line, but based on the chair's guidance, that might be something for April or May.
Yes.
If that's something that, possibly could wait till April and May, that would be great, and give us some chance to have some more in-depth discussion about that. You're correct. It's my hope that we can get to a point where that position is self-funding. However, I just want to be clear with the committee. The work that has been done has been very good so far, and we need to be cognizant of a few things. A major part of that position is to help us to build business partnerships, particularly with career and technical education in mind. We received a $50,000 grant last year, and I'm told that we're in line for another $25,000 from the Department of Education. And the one thing that they're really keeping up with us on is, do you have partnerships with higher ed for this program, and do you have business partnerships for this program? And both of those items, it has been, Barbara Jackson and her work in that role have been instrumental in helping us to achieve those two things. And we have a number of business partnerships. I wish they were in the form of, here's $100,000, go and build yourself a new lab. Right now, they're in the form of, we would love to come to your school, we would love to talk to your students, we would love to introduce them to our business, bring them over, develop some relationships, perhaps even have some internships. And we have 4 real good companies right in our own backyard in Quonset who are willing to have those kinds of relationships. And the next step for them is we need to have the program in place to show them what we're doing in order to go deeper with them in those kinds of, commitments and that being, that kind of money. In a lot of other areas in this district, we are very fortunate to have a lot of private revenue coming to the kids of the North Kingstown School Department. Our booster program is phenomenal. Our Links program is phenomenal. Even, the work that the Office of Family Learning does. And, we're a very good fundraising district. So it's important that this particular role have its own identity, that it's not seeking, to draw that private funding from the same sources and competing with those other organizations. And we're trying to be very cognizant of that. And we see the next niche is with that industry partnership, that industry donation, that is focused on something that has been lacking at North Kingstown High School and North Kingstown School District, and that is career education, that having those kinds of lines in place. So, after 2 years, we're looking at roughly, $78,000, and if you take, the $50,000 in grant money that's already been provided and the $25,000 that looks like it's going to happen at the end of this year, we're roughly, that's about $75,000. So, this is one that I hope we can hold on a little bit. I'd like to have some more discussions with members of the committee about, the future of this particular role and how to get to a point of self-sustainability, if that is indeed what we need. I think more important, what we need is to build a career and technical program. We're off to a great start with engineering. We have a few other course offerings in mind, and at a certain point, we're going to need to transition to having, leadership to oversee that. And with regular career and tech centers, the Charahos and Davies of the world, they have career and tech administrators whose role it is to go out and to recruit kids from other districts and to recruit business partnerships. We don't have that business partnership person yet, and we're not at a point where we're looking to recruit kids from out of district. That's coming soon. So we're going to need those functions involved. But what we do have at a relatively good price of $39,000 a year is someone who can help us to establish the business partnerships, and that's leading us to being in excellent position to get some really good grant money. So I don't want to just, I want to be very thoughtful about how we proceed in the future with this. That's my only concern. Thanks.
So I see hands up. What I would say is perhaps this is a discussion that we should have that is ongoing, and hold off on making any motions tonight. Mr. Buscarden.
I would just possibly then, Doctor, between now and final budget, we could have an update from Barbara Jackson to talk about all these things that you just something else sketched.
I can.
It's been a while, so
Yeah.
okay. And it seems this would be a great time for it.
We do have a motion on the table. We have a motion and a second. So unless we're voting on that, I would need the motion to be withdrawn.
May I make a comment, please?
Mr. Mudge.
This thing obviously bothers me, okay, because, this is $39,000 again this year. And, basically it's a donation. We're giving a donation to an individual or individuals to a foundation that we have no control over. We have no say what they do, how they spend the money, or anything else. Okay? Not one iota.
Yes, we're going to talk about this. Mr. Mudge, I know the superintendent is on the board.
Well, I don't care who's on the board.
So I wouldn't say that there is no control.
There is no school committee.
Yes, there is.
The school committee runs the school department and spends the taxpayers' money.
Bill?
Yes.
I understand your concerns, and I think a couple of members want to get into this more in depth.
Again, see, what happens
Gotta get
even
to
is
the
we discuss
CIP.
these as well. We're going to tend to give the council, this view that, we're not digging in and really trying to do what they want, and we're going to throw a lot of things on them, which we probably are. So that's why I hesitate to keep
I don't think
postponing
Dr. Auger
it.
wanted us to cut $200,000. I think he would have preferred that we not. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're doing
But
something.
I guess I just want to express my concern is that I am very concerned about that, is that we have no control over that whatsoever. We have no say what's going on with them. Travels, they buy coffee or tea or anything else. And,
Ask for a report
I
on
just
that.
kind of wonder if it's legal.
All right. Our attorney is here, and she has not indicated that we have committed anything illegal, so I think we were fine.
Oh, the attorney says that, it must be right.
All right, Mr. Mudge.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
Attorneys never lie. Let's move on.
So, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I would add that if we're accounting, that I believe we have to match the grant with $10,000. So is that correct, Mary?
Match what grant? Oh, the,
50,000?
oh, yeah.
Yes, so let's be cognizant that.
Yeah, it's not a
that-
free
Going out.
That it's not, that there is money going out, first of all. And second of all, I would remind that you know, if we're changing sort of the scope in terms of this, and maybe changing what was originally discussed and promised, that it is a contract, that it might be beneficial to put this out for bid if we feel that there's a need for this service and it's not going to return in the form of cash donations. I mean, it is a contract, so I
maybe-
believe that's another alternative that
Maybe
should
the
be
foundation
discussed.
put it up for contract, Bob. I don't
So,
know.
but I will withdraw my motion at this time.
All right, thank you. So the motion has been withdrawn. All right, so now, folks, let's move on to the capital improvement projects. And because that is the last thing that we need to approve here, I will note that when I turned to my capital improvements page, I had stuck in a sheet on the Davisville Academy that I had printed off, so I will pass that down to Mr. Mudge. He said that he had not received it. All right.
The,
Well, I've received this one.
I've,
Yeah. That doesn't tell me anything.
as you know, at previous meetings, I've given to you a detailed report on, or proposal on what I'm hoping for, that you will approve for capital. I see these as very focused on long-term planning and on the goals that I have set and that you have approved, including a feasibility study to look at long-range planning for our buildings, boiler replacement at Fishing Cove, high school HVAC commissioning, district security upgrades, and an investment in technology. Many of these items, as you know, are part of my goals. And the point that I want to make, while I understand there's some concern that, well, we don't have a detailed report back on how much the boiler is going to cost or how much we're going to cost for the security upgrades or the technology. Perhaps the best way to do this is to say, up to and no more than this dollar amount will be allocated, and we will come back to you in the next few months with some detailed proposals about exactly how much we look to spend. But when we put these together, particularly the security upgrades for $500,000 and the technology reserve for $500,000, our thinking was that while we don't know the specifics that we're going to go on the spreadsheet for the actual proposal, we do know that the kinds of things that we're considering and the advice that we've already received, we're easily going to be looking at these kinds of numbers just for phase one of these kinds of acts. So when you're talking about the kinds of, for instance, the security, the swipe keys that are needed, the cameras that are needed around this district, the better security locks and things for classroom doors, those things add up so quickly that we know we're looking at an investment. The initial investment is probably looking at a multi-year plan. But the initial investment, we can easily find $500,000 worth of supplies that would be needed in phase one. And the same thing with technology. While we haven't made a decision yet, we're getting some good feedback from the company that we're working with, but they haven't come back with the final report yet, and we haven't made decisions about a long-term plan. We do know that no matter what the plan is, that we would like better classroom technology, meaning Aquas boards, smart boards, those kinds of things, interactive technology for classrooms. Right now, we're looking at a district that has about 50% of its classrooms with those boards and 50% without. Adding around $500,000 right now would, at the very least, help with that investment and maybe also help us with more, whether it's one-to-ones or more carts in the building to help with, those kinds of initiatives that we're trying to push as well. We don't know the details yet, but we know for sure that we're easily going to need that kind of money to cover the kinds of investments we're looking to make in the very near future. So I'm asking for the school committee to be allocating $830,000 toward this effort, and then for us to make a request of the town council to allocate $600,000, and the total would be for $1.43 million. And this would cover some very needed long-term measures for capital expenditures. Thank you.
Now, before we have any motions on this, one of the things I would say is, having read the analysis by the Budget Committee, that I appreciate them going through this. We have nothing to gain by asking less of the town council, because they can say no to this altogether, and if they don't want to give us the proposal, that is fine. This is merely a request that is contingent upon what we spend and what we are given. So while I appreciate the analysis, I would not say there is any reason to ask for less, because they can merely say, no, they will fund nothing, yes, they will fund part, and they can make the decision as to what they wish to fund and what they do not. Mrs. Alvanzado.
Yeah, I would kind of concur with that, Kim. And, you know, in this situation, while normally, and of course, when we get closer to the actual projects, we need to see much more detail naturally when we get to stages of purchasing and bidding and all of that. But basically, we're just talking about a budget, I guess, a educated and based on, you know, the things we see ourselves as needing. I just don't want to limit too much as to what we're projecting. We don't have to use the money if there isn't the need.
Comes in less, right?
And although people will chuckle when they hear that, like they always use all the money, that's not really true. We've actually come in under on several projects, the bonds. We did not spend up to the amounts. John's nodding because he knows. So I think we've done a much better job in the last, 4 or 5 years than we used to do of really being on the details. I kind of agree that we need to be a little bit less concerned about an ultra-detailed plan at this stage. Not that we don't need one eventually, but we're not spending the money right now. That's not what this is.
So, Mrs. Alvanzado, are you making a motion to approve the superintendent's capital improvement plan?
I am.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that for discussion. Yeah.
I saw Mr. Jones' hand, and I see Mr. Biscardin's hand.
I'll defer to Mr. Biscardin. He
Okay.
actually had his hand up first.
Okay. Excuse me. There's really not a whole lot to argue or even challenge in here. I mean, being part of the facility subcommittee and getting to know those folks and getting to know Mary King, that all this stuff is, it's pretty spot on. I've seen what the analysis they've gone through for the HVAC and the commissioning study and the boiler replacements, and it's very in-depth, and there's really, I don't think anybody really that's sitting at this table tonight can
Say you wasted money.
yeah, can logically question anything that the Budget Subcommittee has suggested. However, I think on the other side of that, while I know that if anybody were to question Dr. Auger or Mary about the commissioning of the HVAC study, the high school HVAC, or the boiler replacement, or the facility condition analysis, she can pull up information supplied to us by the Budget Subcommittee and give them chapter and verse of why that number is there. On the flip side of that, though, the security upgrades, those are a little less specific. And I just think that the more specific we can be, and not that you're going to be able to be they're not going to be quote-worthy, they're not going to be RFP-type detail in the security upgrades or the technology upgrade. You both said you've gone through and kind of ballparked it. Well, I think it would be beneficial if you could supply that information that puts you in that ballpark.
Actually, with the consultant that we're working with, he has given us that number as what he has seen in other similar-sized districts of what is needed. And after we had a meeting with him as well, he had indicated that our technology infrastructure needed to be upgraded along with this stuff. So that number he felt was, and again, like you said, Mr. Biscardin, we're not going to know until we know, But that number, Dr. Auger and I did not make up that number.
Oh, no, I
Yeah,
know.
that was based on just, this man went around to our buildings, he worked with our facilities manager, and it's what he has seen at the range in other districts of similar size of what they need for these type of communication systems and
Oh,
whatnot.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to sound like you guys
Oh,
grabbed
no.
a number up and pulled it out of the air and just
That's
said.
where we got it from. You're right, it had a little bit of basis of fact, but it's still early.
But I mean, so if you could, if that information he supplied to you could be available when those questions are asked, I think it's just going to go a long way.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yep.
it may not be as specific as.
Summary from him or
Yeah.
something, if he'd be willing to do it. A summary might be useful for the council if they have concerns or questions.
And actually, we're going to have a little bit better than that very shortly. We're going to have what is recommended as Phase 1, which is our communication systems. So our PA systems upgrades, our, radio systems and all that. So that would be, again, not an RFP number, but a more solid number earlier on.
Great, when do you think we'll have
Probably, where are we, March? Probably by the end of March.
Because
that? Okay, during the process.
I know Bob had.
That was a fair point.
Well, yeah, I guess my feeling is, Madam Chair, why don't we just throw turf field on here, too?
It is on there.
I mean,
It is in there.
a little bit of,
It's not.
well, but
Yeah, what do you mean?
the logic, this is sort of the
it's a
SAT logic of saying, well, just answer every question because there's no penalty
No,
if you
it's-
get it
it's-
wrong.
It's the superintendent
You know?
who sets the
Okay, one at a time, please.
district's priorities.
Right, and so my feeling is that, first of all, we've already split the hair in terms of 830 out of, that's our money. We can choose to spend that tomorrow if we wanted to buy more technology, but I understand the concern that we'd like to get through this fiscal year, given we've made some approvals of expenditures that we didn't quite count on at the beginning of the year. So my feeling is that just handing this as stated to the town council sits there and go, well, which of the 600,000 do you want us to fund? Because we're just not going to give you 600,000. We'd like to prioritize this. So my feeling is that we should, at a minimum, say, when we say 600,000, here's the first 600,000 of items. And like Mr. Biscardin said, I believe, the boiler, the HVAC system,
Well, I
and
do
the
believe
district
that's on-
analysis.
That's on the superintendent's.
Right,
rate.
but then you sort of run into going, okay, so that's 350,000. If they're going to fund the whole analysis, 430,000. So the next 170,000 is that part of the security upgrades? Which part of the security upgrades? And so my feeling is, let's transmit to the town council today the items we know that have gone through the facility subcommittee, that have it, and then go back to them, because at any time we can go back to them and say, before May, and say, we'd like this or we wouldn't like this. And we can always say on our 830,000, we're going to reserve this at our discretion. So again, I think we kind of underestimate sending stuff to the town council and sort of going, well, we know we're going to sort of need this kind of stuff. Instead of saying, let's submit the stuff we know is validated, that if we stood on stage with them and they said, it's a multi-year project, well, show us A to Z and then walk us through it, that would make more sense. I don't think anyone's debating that we want to enhance security in the district. And we clearly, because I've said it personally on stage, that we are going to need technology, and we're going to need a technology reserve fund. But it may be that that's something we fund this year. So again, I always just think we're better off transmitting stuff to the town council that is defendable from A to Z in our thing, especially since we're already saying we're going to fund more than half of this on our own. We don't have to put that in writing now. We don't have to lock that in.
Right.
So I would recommend we just submit, the boiler, the HVAC, the portion of the technology reserve that we know we spent last year, because we have a defendable item for that. And if we get more details in before May, I guess we can send an adjustment to them. But again, I feel that we sort of look like we haphazard this kind of stuff. And
Oh, it's not haphazard. I mean, you want some sort of range of estimate, because if we also came here and said, well, we want to do security upgrades, but we have absolutely no idea how much that's going to be, can you make up a number? I mean, so I think haphazard is really not a nice word, actually, because there is some sort of, professional input into those numbers. And again, yeah, they're early on, but haphazard makes it sound like we pulled the number out of the air, and I kind of take offense to that.
Fair enough, Mr. King. Then I would say that we shouldn't transmit a letter that we don't have more than adequate backup detail to go along with it, like we do with the boiler and the HVAC and the district analysis. That would be, I guess, perhaps my more refined point, which is let's attach something that builds the case for the numbers before just throwing it at them and saying, well, they can always say no, because you know what? They're going to say no.
They said no.
Well, there is, the detail there is detail provided in here, and when Mrs. King and Dr. Ajay meet with the town council, that is their time that they can ask.
Who meets with them?
We have a meeting that they said today that our budget
Michael
will be
Embry
heard.
contacted me and said that the budget workshop for the school is March 18th at 5:30 p.m.
I assume the school committee will be there as well. There's the school committee's budget.
It's an open meeting.
It will be the
so-
school committee's budget.
And the town council regularly decides as to who will be speaking.
It will be, and I believe the chairman of the budget committee should actually be presenting the budget as well.
I don't believe that has been done in the past.
You can always ask them, Bill.
Yeah. I mean, I would
Seriously,
think-
you can always go and talk to them about
I
it.
mean, I think it's open.
I'm
for-
sure the town council will tell us as
we
to
know if
who
you
they
want me
would
to be
like
there.
to have being presented, but school
I mean,
committee
we are
members have
presenting
not
the
presented in the
School
past.
committee's budget at that point in time, right?
It is not something that the school committee usually presents at. It is
I'm
a-
okay if Mr. Jones wants to present the budget.
So,
I'll just
I
take the
will-
night off.
I will say to you, Chairman Page, several years ago, the chairman of the school committee presented the budget.
Well, I don't believe that was me.
I know it. May I comment on the last things, please?
What I would say is
I
we
would-
can certainly ask the town council as to what is their preference for how the presentation goes, and they can communicate that to us. Yes, Mr. Mudge, what would you like to comment on?
Yeah, well, I fully support what Mr. Jones said here, and I would make a motion that we,
There's a motion on the
Go.
table in a second.
and the motion is to approve all these. So I'd like to amend the motion just to approve the high school funding that we would like to get this year, and approve the Fishing Cove boiler. Those are things we want this year, monies we want. Okay? We feel that, and I assume that the rationale is there to, present the Fishing Cove boiler. That's something we want. It should be in the budget, period. The $250,000 is theirs anyway. They should be paying every penny for that, okay? Because we talked about that before. Now, I don't know if anybody's read this. I think I said it out 100 times over my life here. But you know
Is there
what
a
the...
second on Mr. Mudge's motion?
I haven't just completed my discussion, please. And I wanted just to make sure and why am I saying this? Because there is a procedure, okay? There's a difference between a budget request for this year and then something to be put in abeyance, like I think that Mr. Jones and the superintendent wanted to do, is to build up a reserve fund someplace, okay, so that we could have a reserve fund. Well, there is a program to do that. It is called the School Capital Reserve Fund, okay? And we should reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of problems. The policy we have in the town governs this, tells us what we do, what falls under capital expenditures. Okay, it is wrong, though, and I pointed it out to the town before, and they haven't corrected it, because in its own policy, it says they can take our school fund balance and put it in their school capital reserve fund. So that's the policy. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be worked out. However, there's some extreme and individual things in here. If we go down and we separate ourselves from putting stuff, okay, that we want in the budget this year, there's a path to do that, and we do it. We should do it tonight for these two things. But if we want to put something in abeyance and hold it in abeyance, the town council has a policy that governs that. And you know what it says in this policy? It says they hold it and you go to them. I'm just going to paraphrase it. It also says that they will put out the contract. They will manage the program. They will control the bids. Okay? And ultimately, it's all in the policy. It's been here for 100 years. Okay? And it exists today. We've talked about this in the Budget Committee and with the Councilman McKay. We need to clean this up to understand how we can put something aside for certain things for the school committee, okay, or for school committee expenditures. We know we don't need anything for emergency funding. If a roof falls in today, the town council's got the money. We go to their money. So there is a process. We're going to still work on that, okay? But you get into a lot of tricky things when you talk about the school capital reserve fund, whether it's for technology or whether it's for equipment or vehicles, okay? And in fact, it's my opinion, I don't know if Mrs. King has looked at this or not, this year we just approved $240,000 or something like that for school buses. Now, we just took that money out of our school fund balance. It's my opinion that they have to, the town council has to appropriate that to us. And I'm sure our attorney will agree with that because she did before, okay, because our appropriated balance for fiscal year 14 now has to be increased by $250,000, as it was last year when we got $288,000 with some extra money that we took out and put that in the, okay, in the budget. So I don't know if we had followed up with that before, okay, but it would be inappropriate for us to put a contract out for the buses and, for example, even this Wi-Fi system without town council approval. Any questions on that?
All right, we have a motion
Any
on the
questions?
table and a
Oh.
second.
Does anybody like to question me on that? I hope I get some questions.
So are we ready to vote on the capital improvement plan? Dr. Sutter, do you have a question?
I'll submit this again to the chair, okay?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Sounds like in March, we'll have more detail on the security plan. If we could get something similarly detailed on the technology plan, I'm comfortable supporting the CIP as it is. That's my comment.
Do we have more information on the technology plan in March?
Yes.
Could I recommend something?
All right,
So what are they approving,
Here's
the whole,
my
your whole
problem
thing?
with it.
Yes.
If we send
there is a
6
motion on
items
the
over,
floor in the second.
if we send, may I just finish?
No,
If we send
you've
6
had your
items
time,
over,
Mr. Mudge, so
gotta
it's time
say
to move
something
on.
hard and tangible.
Mrs.
At least send
Avanzato
2
made her
over.
comment, so
I like
now
to say-
we're going to be voting on the
can I-
motion. So,
It's,
we have a motion to approve the superintendent's proposal on the CIP in a second. Lorraine, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Yep, Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes, with the caveat that there'll be more detailed information for the capital reserve, the security and technology.
Thank you. Robert Jones.
No, not as constituted.
William Mudge.
I'm going to say no, because first of all, the motion, I think, isn't appropriate. What is the number?
All you need is a yes or no,
Excuse me.
folks. Just
What
a yes
is
or
the
no.
number? What
It's a
is
no?
the number
Kimberly
that we?
Gage.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What is the number
Linda
that we
Avanzato.
are voting
Mudge,
on?
I'm going to call you out of order.
What is the number we are voting on?
100,000 something.
What is it?
The
No,
number that's in the letter,
$1,430,000.
So we're asking them for 1.4 million of funding this year.
Mudge, we are not asking them for that much. We are asking them for 600,000.
asking them for
So what are we asking the council to
Okay.
come up with money for?
We are in the
this
middle
year?
of the vote. So, Lorraine,
Excuse me.
Sorry, Linda
What are we
Avanzato?
asking
Yes.
the council to appropriate?
You voted no, doesn't matter.
Don Viscarden.
Could you read that for me? Could you read exactly what we are voting on, please?
It's to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the capital improvement plan as submitted.
And what does that mean for the town council? What are they going to appropriate?
And I'm just trying to clear this up with my opportunity to speak during this.
It means we're improving $830,000 of expenditures for us on on these items and asking the town for $600,000.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-2.
Thank you. All right, folks, that is it for our agenda for tonight.
Yeah, well, may I have one other thing, please?
I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
May I have a passage of correspondence, please?
We do not discuss
I
correspondence
didn't say
right now.
discuss it, I'd like to pass it in.
Oh, you may pass it in.
Now, we don't
I'm
have
looking for a motion to
Any
adjourn.
comments on,
So
excuse me.
moved.
Do
I
I have
have
a
some
second
comments on
on
the
the
Wi,
motion to
Madam,
adjourn?
I have some comments on the Wi-Fi system.
I'm not,
Okay.
I'm not going to.
What about our school, can't we have closing comments of school committee members?
No,
Why
we do
not?
not have closing comments for school committee members, because you've had plenty of time to talk, Mr. Mudge.
I have been
So
waiting
we
to
have a
introduce my
motion and a
request on
second to
Wi-Fi.
adjourn. All
Okay,
those in
Wi-Fi.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
And passing in this information. You're ashamed.
Opposed to adjourning, say no. Motion carries. We are adjourned. It is.
As long as she puts it on the agenda.